Legend has it, in the mystic land of Prydain, there was once a king so cruel and so evil that even the gods feared him. Since no prison could hold him, he was thrown alive into a crucible of molten iron. There his demonic spirit was captured in the form of a great black cauldron. For uncounted centuries the Black Cauldron lay hidden, waiting, while evil men searched for it, knowing whoever possessed it would have the power to resurrect an army of deathless warriors, and with them rule the world. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Bucket Think Tank for Disney Royalty Interlude, the Black Cauldron, Taran, and Eilonwy. So the Black Cauldron is a holdover from the Disney Dark Age, the first Disney Dark Age. And the Disney Dark Age would not end until Oliver and Company. And by that time, we're all set for the Disney Renaissance. But what's important to note about the Disney Dark Ages is that this first one was created primarily because of the company's status after Walt Disney's death. Morale's down. No one quite knows what to do without this big figurehead. And I think the Black Cauldron is this huge attempt to sort of almost rebrand the company and the direction. And the problem is the company had already been set in a very set and focused tone. Walt Disney had once said like he'd love to have made something like To Kill a Mockingbird, but he'd already been so set in this, and the company would reflect that. The Black Cauldron itself is not a terrible film. It's not a great film. It's barely a good film. It did not do well. It did not reach its $25 million budget, and if you can't even pay for yourself, there's no point. But there is something to be said about this film because of how different it is and how bold it comes off as. But it feels like an issue like people have with The Last Jedi. A lot of it's different, but a lot of what's different isn't really good. The Black Cauldron feels it is in part a Don Bluth film. Don Bluth was one of the animators for it. You can feel his presence in the film in characters like the Horned King, who looks really great until you see his face, in my opinion. And with the backgrounds, they look a bit like Don Bluth's work, and the subtle little blood. So, Disney's never been big on blood. The most we got was Maleficent and Sleeping Beauty, and here we've got blood on Taran's lip, and there was supposed to be more. There's a lot of dark scenes in this film, and you get the impression that, again, this is trying to be something new and interesting, but it never quite reaches that, and you get the cult following. You get it, and to be fair, I think the biggest problem is this isn't an original idea. Not just the adaptation thing, but this is based off the Prydain Chronicles written by Lord Alexander. And the Prydain Chronicles, if you haven't read them, they're really good. They're really good. And he was consulted on this, and he even went on record to say like he enjoyed the movie, but this wasn't the book. As a matter of fact, this is two books. The first two books fused together. There are a lot of key differences between this movie and those two books. Namely, the fact that the Horned King he's only in the first book. Like, he is a bit player. Eilonwy is different. Taran's end goal is different. Gurgi is a bigger mystery in the books, oddly enough. And Fluda. Oh, Fluda. I love Fluda in this movie because he's just hilarious. He's fun. But he's totally different, at least in my opinion, in the books. He's much more serious. He's more knowledgeable. He's actually a king. But at the end of the day, the question is, how does this movie stand on its own 2 feet? And it kind of doesn't. There is, I think, a genuine pacing issue. Like, it goes really fast. Like, once Taran leaves the castle, it feels like there should be another 20 minutes of story that just isn't there. This should have been 100 minutes, easy, to sort of flesh all of our characters out. That's the biggest problem. I think the person with the most character in this entire film is Fluda, and maybe Creature. Maybe. But definitely Fluda. And it's a bit depressing because there's a lot of emphasis on Taran and his journey, but it never feels like it's truly realized, even though you get the lesson he learns. And Eilonwy, well, let's just get into the characters. So Taran he's a bit interesting. He reminds me a bit of Arthur, in the fact that where Arthur was a character who says, like, you know what, I won't be able to do half the stuff I ever want to do, I'm probably never going to get the chance. Taran is the exact opposite. He's very much the young boy who dreams of being a hero, this great figure in the war. He even says to Dolben, what if the war's over? I never get to fight. And he's got the ideas like, I'll be fine. I'm not afraid. I can be a hero. I'll be a great warrior. And when he's given a simple task, he epically fails at it. That's sort of the beauty of the Black Cauldron. It does sort of give you that real story. The young boy who says, like, I can do it. I can do anything. It's a bit like Ash Ketchum. Like, Ash Ketchum had all these great dreams. I'm going to be a Pokemon master. And which really made no sense that he had no idea how to do that. But once he leaves Pallet Town, it becomes very real. It becomes very hard to manage. And with Taran, it hits him even harder because someone's life is at stake here. He's an assistant pig keeper who was effectively promoted to full-time pig keeper, and he couldn't even keep track of one pig. And it sounds funny. It sounds hilarious. He had one job, Taran. But when push comes to shove, he does, like, I gotta go save her. I have to save Henwyn. He has to go deal with the Gwithins, who, in the novels, they're birds. They're like giant evil eagles. Another thing, the Bredain Chronicles feels like had this been done right, this could have been Disney's Lord of the Rings. Like, even money. Hands down, Disney, get on this. This should be your next live-action property. But he goes to the Horned King. He meets the Horned King, and the Horned King is a brilliant villain in just that first appearance. How it seems like his magic is sort of electrifying the room as he appears, and everyone freaks out. And Taran he does his best to try to get them both out of there, but he's only able to save Henwyn. And there's a really great scene when Taran's in the dungeon, and he's hearing his own thoughts of the day, like, I can do it, Hen, I can do it, and he feels like a total broken down failure. And that's good, that's really good. That's a bit similar to the books. In the books, Taran has to often give up things, like to achieve bigger, more important goals. He has to give up his search for Henwyn to alert these Sons of Dawn about the Horned King and the Cauldron Born. And that's a big deal. That's a big deal. He has to sacrifice a brooch that grants him great wisdom in the second one for the Black Cauldron, which is kind of alluded to here. But then Taran acquires the sword. Like, we know he meets Eilonwy, but bear with me. Meeting Eilonwy isn't that important, at least for this part. He gets the sword, and there's a noticeable change in his character when he gets the sword. He's a bit more outgoing. He's more confident. He's calling himself a great warrior. He says, like, it takes a great warrior to wield this sword. No, dude, it's a magic sword. To quote Webby from the DuckTales 2017, it's the Deus Ex Calblade. And he really relies on that sword. He sees it as his badge of honor, that he's a warrior. And he apologized to Eilonwy when he goes too far. He is willing to say we have to find the Black Cauldron and destroy it. He's very assertive with the witches of Morda, and then he gives up the sword. He gives up the sword to acquire the Black Cauldron, and is even more like, with this sword you can become the greatest warrior Bredain has ever known. But he makes the sacrifice, and now he has the cauldron, but nowhere to use it. And this is always something I kind of wondered. What's the point of getting the cauldron when no one knows where it is? All you have to do is find the cauldron, make sure it stays hidden, and you're done. But no, they got it. It's out in the open. It's too big to carry. And then the Horned King shows up. But without the sword, Taran sort of goes back to where he was before, in the dungeon, actually. He lacks all self-confidence in himself. He sees himself as nothing but an assistant pig keeper. He flat out tells everyone that. And Eilonwy perks him up, says, you have to believe in yourself. And that's kind of enough for him to realize, I have to do something. I may not have the sword. I may just be an assistant pig keeper, but I can still make the big moves, the big sacrifices as he prepares to jump into the cauldron. But Gurgi beats him to it. And then Taran is able to stop the Horned King, get them all out of there. And when presented with the opportunity to have the sword again, courtesy of Fluda being awesome again, he says, like, what, I don't need this sword. I'm not a warrior. I'm a pig keeper, an assistant pig keeper. I will trade it for Gurgi. And they bring him back to life. He's got Gurgi. The Horned King's been stopped. He's dead. And so on and so forth. But what really helps is that Taran has grown up. His character has grown. And I say this because if you compare him to the Horn King and Taran they're very interesting because they sort of parallel each other. The Horn King is this tall, imposing figure who wants to be a god. You know, he's tired of being this, I guess, sorcerer with an ugly face. He wants to be a god. He wants more. He sees himself as worthy of it. Taran he doesn't have an amazing design. He's actually pretty by the books, but he wants to be a hero. And like the Horn King, he puts his trust in the gimmicks, the tools, the aesthetics. That's sort of what the sword is. Taran sees the sword like, okay, with the sword I'm this, and he has to realize, well, no, it's not what makes me me. I don't need a sword to be a great hero. I don't need the sword. I am who I am. It's a bit lazy, but it's kind of it. Taran learns to trust less in the gimmicks and more in himself. Eilonwy, oh, Princess Eilonwy. I'm sure we've all seen the memes. There's going to be one up here. There it is. Eilonwy is the forgotten Disney princess, the first forgotten Disney princess. My original intention was to put Alice from Alice in Wonderland here, but I'm like, no. We're not putting Alice here. She's only a princess in Kingdom Hearts. But Eilonwy's a legitimate princess, and she's mostly forgotten. And it's pretty easy to understand why. This movie was a flop, and to be fair to Eilonwy in this movie, she's not that interesting. Her appearance in the movie, in the dungeon, her first appearance, is pretty in line with the books. The only real difference is that Eilonwy is living with her quote-unquote niece, Akron, who is also she's a bigger player in the series. Eilonwy herself she's an actual princess, and she's from a family of enchantresses. The bauble she has, it doesn't move on its own. It actually doesn't move at all. But it is a very powerful magical item. And again, that's why the Horn King wants her. But in the show, it moves on its own. It's moving because of her. Her character is also a bit different. If I had to compare to anything, I would say she's like an awkward fusion of Hermione and Ginny Weasley. And those who've read the entirety of the books multiple times, feel free to correct me on that, who you would compare her to. But she's just really fun. She's really interesting. She's a firecracker. And she has this amazing love of simile and metaphors when she talks. At one point she had said, if you don't listen to what somebody tells you, it's like putting your fingers in your ears and jumping down a well. That's just fun. I think that sums up Eilonwy in a lot of ways. She's this truly unique, one-of-a-kind girl. And what's really cool is that she fights. She's no legendary warrior. Even though she mentions that the women in her family have been known to take up swords if need be. She doesn't have the training. But when push comes to shove, if need be, she'll take up a sword, take up a spear, take up a bow and arrow. No one expects her not to fight for the most part, because you need to fight. And even without those, she will resort to biting and scratching. You know, she's not a warrior, but she's not going to go quietly. And in the movie, none of that's there. Like, even her first appearance, which we talked about before, she sort of feels like she's a guest. Like, oh, this place is so dusty. It's so dusty. Oh, hello, I'm Princess Eilonwy. Are you a lord? No, you're not. That's a shame. We could use a lord. Because, you know, a lord would have an army, people looking for him, a way to get us out of here. But no, you're just, what are you? An assistant pig keeper. Nice, nice. Book Eilonwy is a bit similar, but she's in the castle again because of her aunt, and she breaks Taran out. She helps Taran escape along with Prince Gwydion, who is a major character, helps him and Fluta break out just to upset her quote-unquote aunt. Like, it will upset Akron so much, I'm gonna do it. And that's kind of it. I think that's sort of the worst thing about the Black Cauldron is what it did to Eilonwy. Eilonwy is a princess who is so far ahead of her time for Disney. Like, this should have been a slower series. It should have just been the first one. I think actually adapting the first one would have been fine because everyone's still there. Taran's still there. He's in all the books. Eilonwy's in all but one book. Gurgi's introduced in this book. Fluta, Prince Gwydion. You could have also done the first book. The Horn King's in the first book. They should have just done that and let the chips fall where they may. The chips already fell horribly. Not even that horribly. It was only like $4 million shy of its budget. So, yeah, actually, yeah, it flopped. There isn't much to say about Eilonwy or Taran, because even down to their designs, they're very by the books. I mean, have you ever seen the Gummy Bears cartoon? They look just like Kevin and Princess Kala. They do. I'll even put the pictures up there. Look at them. Look just like him. Look just like him. And at least Princess Kala is worse than Eilonwy, I think, because Princess Kala feels totally by the books, boring. Like, I'm a princess, but I don't want to be a princess. I want to fight. I want to learn how to shoot arrows and swing swords. And yeah, at the time, that was relatively important, but she hasn't aged well. Eilonwy hasn't aged well in a different way because nothing about her actually has an impact on the movie. Like, all she really does that matters is she finds Taran, and she helps him around a bit, and that's kind of it. Oh, and she sews Fuda's pants. Oh, and she and Taran kiss at the end. It's kind of it. Kind of it, really. You can get why this film is forgotten and why it isn't counted as a Disney princess film, even though there is a quote-unquote Disney princess here. Again, it's the marketability and how successful your movie was. If you don't have these two, it doesn't matter how well you hit the beats of a Disney princess movie. If it doesn't make money, you're not a Disney princess. And with that in mind, we're going to bring this video to a close here. If you've read the Verdane Chronicles, I'd love to hear your favorite book or how you felt about the movie. Do you think that Eilonwy should be a Disney princess? And I will catch you all later. This is the Bucket Think Tank signing out. May your fandom serve you well.